thought we were gonna buy last year down there.
It would have been full.
Yeah.
It's coming in now.
One
Stuff
thing
it,
was
so
the
I had an extra hour, all I
The
did was
one we
post
were
it
gonna buy
in.
was, it was
I do that too.
Wow.
Yeah, I do that every time.
what it was.
Hey, is there content under the,
It's just set up
exact-
that way.
No.
Okay.
No.
No claims, huh? You guys got them all marked out.
I got here.
You got here early, on time.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Really should have got all these.
It's not too late.
Incoming.
How you doing, Billy? How was the one act? Nice. Right. We are going to do a new conference phone install. I think that
Did you know, man?
I think.
I got here early.
I remember you saying that, you texted me that.
Next week, Wednesday.
Yeah, next week Wednesday.
It wasn't me.
Perfect.
There's rugs and
That
there
was helpful. I sure hope so.
was.
It can't be worse.
Minor
It can't possibly be worse.
$130,000.
I think it's that it wasn't the worst thing ever, it just,
Oh, hi.
It's
for
not
the
very.
conversation to take place, you just wouldn't know who was talking to someone, even if you could see the.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome, everybody. Any additions to the agenda this evening?
No additions.
Okay, I'll look for a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. On to two visitors to be heard. If anyone wants to come up and share your name, address, and keep it to 2 minutes. I will leave time later if your item you're here about tonight on the agenda. I'll leave that open for public comment too if it's on an agenda item. So this is something for not on the agenda tonight, if anyone wants to come forward.
Just for clarity, there will be appropriate time later for agenda items.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, seeing that there's none, we'll move to the consent agenda. Nate, anything you'd like to draw attention to with that tonight?
Mayor and council, a few items. First, this is one you'll see in your reports every month, 2026 project status reports. So that'll be in your agenda once a month going forward. A slight project change order for our DOT street sweeping project from 2024. Making official our hire of Tia Rosler as our full-time patrol officer from part-time. We're requesting authority to advertise for Oriel reconstruction bids when that project is ready. It'll probably be several weeks, but we want to be ready to roll when it happens, and we don't want to wait for the next council meeting for that to happen. A Stephanie Miller grant application for the library for their summer reading program, and minor amendments to the seasonal job descriptions for recreation assistant and seasonal groundskeeper.
Thank you. Discussion from council?
How did our wastewater treatment facility handle this ridiculous cold?
So far, so good. I think, Chad, you texted Saturday too and asked, and I checked with Kyle. Everything was doing well. I mean, they're doing their monitoring, but it handled Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and last night fairly well. So.
Nice.
Yep. If anybody's been out there, you'll notice that we did purchase cornstalk bales again to help block that wind from the northwest, and I do think that's helping.
What's the later, or how do we feel the bid, conditions are gonna be for the Orlando?
And Mitch can correct me if I misspeak here, but I think given how few projects are out there, I think there's some contractors that are ready to roll and eager to have a good project that summer. So.
Psych activity at the library continues to be on the up with virtual checkouts growing annually. Nice to see head counts are stable as well. Just once again, a plug for the library. It's a great part of our community, and anybody who wants to partake in a really cool thing, go down to the library and check it out.
Those activities, whether it's after school or early outs or the senior movie days, the matinees, I think that helps keep that process rolling. I think those are really good adjustments that we've made.
No doubt.
Seems like getting the little kids in there, like I see that growing all the time, that's a positive. Get them started young, they'll continue to use the library. I like that.
We had short notice from Parks and Rec about a youth pickleball 3-week learning session essentially with a real quick registration turnaround. Did we get any interest in that?
I know there's a few. I think it kicks off tomorrow.
Yeah.
If I remember right.
Yeah. Yes.
Tomorrow or Wednesday, I don't remember
Tomorrow.
what it was. So I know we had some. I couldn't tell you off the top of my head how many, but I can look it up later and let you know.
Good. Good, good.
Are they still taking applicants or is that now closed?
I think it's closed, but I'll check.
The adult pickleball league is open, I think, into late February for registrations as it starts in March. But the youth one, I think she had a Saturday deadline, this last Saturday.
I think that's well with soccer for this spring.
Any other?
Can we update Officer Colt Bradley on the memo?
Yeah, it's a
Instead of
cold.
cold.
Yeah. I noticed that too just a little bit ago.
He might have
Okay.
been, he might have been cool.
Could have been.
Motion approved the consent agenda? Second.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? We'll do roll call this evening. Peterson,
Aye.
Swear,
Aye.
Welch,
Aye.
Vendrell,
Aye.
Hazy,
Aye.
Doherty.
Aye.
Motion does carry. No item for old business this evening, so new business items. We'll go 5.1, and if there's something on this agenda that we have public comment, just make sure you give me a little wave and we'll have you come up. So Nate's resolution 2026-01, 2601 ambulance sole source bidding.
Mayor and council, as you know, we need to replace one of our ambulances this year. You'll recall that it's one of our larger purchases. It's really remounting the current ambulance box onto a new chassis. Typically, that's subject to South Dakota bidding laws. But we found that this specific service is so unique that there's really only one vendor readily available to us. This resolution is intended to meet the requirements of state law, which does permit sole source procurement in a case such as this. The resolution has been reviewed by the city attorney. Once approved, we'll task the ambulance director with negotiating final details and a contract that will require your approval. Sounds like we'll have that ready for the next meeting.
Discussion, council?
It's tough when there's only one out there.
Yeah, you know, there are companies that do this, but they're a long ways away. Even the ones that were within 3 hours, and I think there was only one of them. You know, they couldn't do like a loaner ambulance during the build. It was a rental, so it's obviously going to cost us quite a bit more, so.
Any other discussion? If not, I'll look for a motion to approve resolution 2026-01, 2601.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Okay, motion does carry. On to 5.2, resolution 2026-01, 2602, accepting Countryside Phase 2 infrastructure.
Mayor, before I get to this, I do have some information on pickleball. 18 kids registered to close today.
Awesome.
That's good.
That's a pretty good number.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, Mayor and Council, the developer of the Countryside subdivision has required that the city accept the infrastructure installed on our behalf. Early last year, KN Construction finished Phase 2. That work has since been completed and inspected and found in keeping with our requirements. The improvements are provided in Exhibit A to the resolution, and the engineer's notice of final inspection has been included in your packet. The developer previously supplied a letter of credit for the full value of the subdivision, which is also included. I recommend a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing that there's none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right, motion carries. On to 5.3, preliminary plan of Nelson addition.
Mayor and Council, we received an updated preliminary plan for the Nelson addition. In late '25, the Planning Commission approved a rezone of this property from ag to multifamily. Now that that's zoned correctly, the developer has submitted a prelim plan for your review and appropriate approval. You'll note correspondence from the city engineer that there were several revisions requested. All have been accepted. I have some additional notes in the memo there. I would note that the Planning Commission recommended approval to the City Council at their meeting last week with some amendments. Those amendments were included today, and so the preliminary plan in your packet was updated not long ago and includes those amendments and notes. I recommend a motion to approve.
All right, thank you. I think I'll open for public comment on this item here first, and then we'll kind of dive in a little bit more too. So is there any public comment? Please come forward and state your name and address.
Thank you for public comment. Betsy Hills, 4th and Cleveland Avenue. My husband and I are adjacent landowners to this planned development, and my parents also own the adjacent pasture land. So during the planning and zoning meeting during Thursday, January 22nd, I reported how we are working with the developer, Mr. Nelson, regarding a number of items I am just not going to summarize right now for the sake of time. As Nate mentioned, planning and zoning approved the preliminary plan with some amendments that I have asked for, and so I'm going to go through those tonight. Number one, I'm grateful planning and zoning added my provision asking for signage. I indicated I need help on a safety issue. I'm asking the city to install signage indicating 4th Avenue is a dead end or start of a private driveway. We have young children playing outside, and we're concerned about the public mistaking our driveway as a street. Regarding the preliminary plan itself, it's my understanding the city requested future roadways be shown extended onto our property as part of the city's comprehensive growth plan, but there's also a problem with this. The lines drawn are physically unrealistic. Proposed Long Creek Trail, a 70-foot wide right-of-way, located on the south end of the developer's development, extends through multiple properties, including my husband and my land and my parents' pasture. The proposed alignment is located within a FEMA floodplain and likely impacts jurisdictional wetlands along the fringes of Long Creek. Future 4th Avenue appears to be extended along the quarter section line with no regard to our existing house location. Standard practice is for a preliminary plan to scope the subject property and its connectivity with city infrastructure. So we object to showing specific street right-of-ways on our properties. We are not participants with this preliminary plan. And no, we have not been contacted by the city regarding coordination of alignments for future development. Depicting these roadways implies a level of consent and coordination that simply does not exist. To be frank, there are lines all over our property, and this plan does not indicate what they are or what they mean. I have not seen the updated preliminary plan. Maybe those adjustments have been on there, or they've just been briefly talked about. Preferably, we request this line work removed to avoid any confusion as if there was an agreement and participation with private property owners. If the city is persistent about labeling a fantasy of a potential future roadway, it needs to be indicated in the legend or with line work or notes referencing what the roadways are, how it's conceptual, and how it's subject to change. It would be pretty irresponsible not to do so. It would be pretty irresponsible not to do so. My second request of planning and zoning, which they added as an amendment, is if the roadways must remain, a note must be added to the preliminary plan and the future engineering submittals, saying this line work reflects the city's comprehensive growth plan and is conceptual and subject to change. In summary, if this comes to a vote tonight, I hope you consider removing the potential roads on private property owners who were not contacted about, did not give consent on, and have no plans to develop. But if they must remain, I hope you side with the two amendments of mine, planning and zoning, motioned and approved, to add some clarity to this. Overall, we want to ensure our private property rights and safety are respected. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other? Any other public comment on this item?
My name's Ralph Colson. I live on Cleveland, 27821. We still get back to the deal of, does anybody know what actually is going in there? You know, I've been talking to everybody since December, and everybody around here keeps on saying, nope, don't know. Does anybody know?
I don't think anything's been submitted yet.
We have a concept plan, but it's not anything final. I mean, the best I can describe it as townhomes, apartments.
Well, one of the major deals too is, you know, you could start talking about the roads and stuff like that. Quakers has destroyed Cleveland. I mean, they've destroyed it. I mean, now we're gonna put more vehicles on it? Who's gonna pay for that new road?
The county's gonna redo it before we take it over, right?
Correct.
Are they gonna completely redo it?
And we have
An overlay, right?
it's either a seal or an overlay, I can't remember.
I thought it was an overlay.
No.
And if they do, are they gonna try to take care of some of the drainage problems? We got a serious drainage problem on it. I mean, are they gonna just redo the road? I mean, like I said, since they redid that little, partial on the east side of Cleveland down there, the water used to be able to go down through that ditch way there. Now they pretty much completely shut it off. So now all the water backs up all the way into Quakers because the drainage comes off of Quakers, goes through to the south. All that stuff there goes through Quakers, and then right there drops across and goes in onto my property. And since they've done that, stuff sparked back up onto my property. So if they do redo the road, are they gonna try to do something for drainage? I mean, it's, like I said, if you take a car and you kind of take 44 and you go north on Cleveland, the road is shit until you hit into the Quakers. And after that, road's perfect. So you know it's Quakers, they're semis up and down that road. Plus, if this thing goes in, there'll be that more traffic. Like I said, the main deal on that is, that road's gotta be redone. There should be actually more drainage done too on it. Like I said, everything's backing up, the road's going to heck too. But I thought, one of the things too is, I read on one of the Lennox policies, it's their policy not to put residential neighborhoods in anywhere close to an arterial road. Says right there in your guys' policies. And arterial roads is 4417 and main through the center of town. So you guys going against your own policy on this? I don't know, it's just questions. And so far, nobody's ever been able to come up and answer any of them. So, anyway,
Do we know if that's considered an arterial?
so 44 is.
Cleveland.
Cleveland.
It's considered an arterial but not a principal arterial. The highway system is a principal arterial.
Well, in your policies, it says arterial, not principal. So, either your policy's wrong or this is wrong, one of the two.
Doesn't our comprehensive or our zoning state that we put multi-housing as a buffer between those types of roads and other housing?
Correct.
Well,
And the land use plan has it set aside as residential.
but under comprehensive, it says residential. And then I consider multifamily residential, isn't it?
It is, but it's a different type of zoning, so we have different zonings for multifamily versus just single family.
Well,
So the residential would be single family residential, and then what we've zoned this for is,
R2.
yep, R2,
Correct.
so that's
R2.
multifamily, multi-purpose.
well, that's like I said, that's what I got, because like I said, your policies state that you will not put residential next to an arterial road.
And they clarified that for you.
So, what they're saying then is if you got multiple family house, it's not residential,
It's a different type of
Right.
residential, it's R2.
right?
Residential 1 and residential 2.
Right, just like an apple and an orange. They're both fruit, but they're different.
Okay, like I said, my main concern is that, and plus the road, and the drainage. And like that should be one thing to look at.
We all have the concerns.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment on this? Okay, do we have questions, discussion from council? And if we need to bring Mitch up on some of this, we sure can too, unless Mitch, you had something off the top?
I can just confirm that those notes that Betsy was referencing have been added to the plan.
Good.
So I've reviewed what they resubmitted.
What part did just got added?
If you look at, apologize,
I think it's.
sheet 2, so probably page 3, I think,
Under subdivision notes.
page 4.
She essentially wants her to do this purple area.
So
Yeah, I know, he said it did get marked, I was asking where it got.
on sheet 2,
Sheet 2.
under the second bullet point, comprehensive plan,
Where in here did we put a note in here about her request for signage on the driveway?
yes, that is on
That's the last one.
last note on that same sheet.
Thank you.
And I've already talked to the developer and our street superintendent about making sure we have that done.
Thank you.
So all those notes are made on this plan that got uploaded then? So,
Yeah, and just
yep,
keep in mind, the preliminary plan is just that, it's a planning document. There's no permitting that is issued with your preliminary plan. Any permitting for construction activity is reviewed completely separate from this. So when it comes to signs, things of that sort, they submit a plan for their signage plan. And if it's compliant with the city standards, then a permit is authorized for them to put those signs in. So there's a lot of that to come yet. We haven't seen any construction documents at this point, so I expect we'll see more of them as this is approved. This is really just their general layout so that they can show you folks that they are complying and intending to comply with your standards. And there's gonna be more detail that comes, and the reason we do that is because they don't wanna put in all the effort of engineering and have those costs associated just to bring it forward and have it denied. So the process that you have is to kind of baby step through these things a little bit, and this is really the first step of several that you'll go through.
Can you speak a little bit to the roads that are outside of the planned development area?
Yeah, so the comprehensive plan is something that is a public document that you guys have adopted some time ago. In that document, there's a map that shows future road system. And that future road system is planned out for a 3-mile buffer around your community. So it's not just adjacent to this property, it's 3 miles out, and it's really meant to think big picture. We get plats that come in from 2 miles out of town, and we wanna make sure that when those plats come through, that's really your only opportunity to have some say in what they need to set aside for your future road system. That's really why it exists. And it's only prompted when a landowner comes forward and wanting to subdivide and restructure their property. So that plan is there in place in that event that you receive a plat and you are ahead of the game and have plans laid out that they can comply with.
So as a adjoining landowner, like, should she be concerned that it's shown on here as a potential future roadway? I guess how can we ease their mind of, this isn't like the plan that's gonna force them to move their house?
So they've added this note regarding the comp plan.
Yep.
To help satisfy that concern. A planning document like this, again, is just approved by you guys, giving staff the authority, the guidance to say, okay, on this property, the council, the planning and zoning council agree with this general layout that's being proposed. We can now help guide this developer through his permitting. Okay, it really doesn't have any involvement with the neighbors unless there's a reason for the developer to have to get onto their land. Then those things are for them to negotiate with that landowner. So say there was a street that straddled the property line, and the intent was to put it on that property line. They would have to go and engage with that landowner adjacent to them, get all the proper easements and things of that sort to be able to improve that facility. And really, again, this is the developer's project. It's the city's to permit and allow them to do that project. But at the end of the day, it's that property owner's project, and it needs to be contained to their property unless they have arrangements made in other regard.
Some of the discussion on P and Z was about the flood study, and that probably might not align to what the developer will be able to go off of. Is that something that can be added where, because the flood study will probably be done after they start moving dirt, right?
I would expect that the flood study will be done in several months probably before they move dirt.
Yep.
There'll be a draft of it that they'll be able to use for their information. Until the flood study is complete though, the only requirement is that they're prohibited from putting fill in the floodplain. Okay, and that's really Nate's role as your floodplain administrator. He has to look at every permit request that comes through that involves putting fill in the floodplain and say, okay, I have enough information here to go off to permit this, or I don't. Your ordinances are all structured that way as well. So the only thing they won't be able to do is fill. They could stockpile soil in anticipation of filling that area, but until that study is done, they just physically can't fill it. So I would expect you'll still see them start where they're outside the floodplain and doing their earthwork up in that area. Maybe stockpile some dirt until the study is done, and then depending on the results of the study, and again, they have to show us that they're not gonna impact that floodplain out there, they can't create a rise. There's many requirements that they have to meet before that fill can be permitted.
Okay. Any other questions for Mitch?
Now, it looks like, is it Bellevue Drive is in phase 1, but yet Hunter Place is in phase 2. My concern is we have too many, per se, buildings already in that area. Are we going to be able to meet codes for possible fire and stuff like that? Can we make sure to include that second entrance?
So those are the things we'll look at when they do submit their first site to build. We're always looking at fire code requirements, we're looking at your building code requirements. They have an engineer that they hire that should be familiar with those requirements already, and they're obligated to develop those plans to meet those requirements. So it's something we'll definitely be aware of and looking at. We gotta be careful, we don't necessarily wanna put an undue burden on the property owner, but we do wanna make sure that they're meeting those minimum requirements for code.
There is a note added on sheet 2 as well on fire protection and complying with the fire code.
Whose responsibility is it then to possibly finish off 4th Avenue, the first 300 feet going west off of Cleveland?
The developers.
The developer? Okay. Is that the intent during that first phase 2?
You'd have to, I mean, if you look at, you know, in terms of, like, before they get houses built or apartments built, we'd wanna see, the vast majority of infrastructure built and installed to our standard. I think, you know, on, Windsong, we required at least the bottom lift of asphalt to be done before they got in there to start building houses, for example.
Okay, and just after that section is where we would put that signage, correct?
At the end of that section, yeah,
Okay.
to indicate,
The change
we'll
order.
work with the property owner on what exactly the sign needs to say before we order them.
Okay.
But something about dead end, private drive.
I know there was questions about the Long Creek Trail. You know, right now, we don't know what the ground behind here to the west will become someday. I mean, and we have to think big picture, 50 years, 100 years out. You know, if there's ever a time where that becomes just open greenland, really this right of way is being set aside so that it would be access to those areas down the road. We don't know if that would ever be, you know, just a walking path, just a nature trail, street, we don't know. But that's kind of the intent of that.
Other questions for Mitch?
What if a plan is submitted and it doesn't check all the boxes we have in our ordinances?
It gets denied.
Black and white?
What?
It's black and white.
Yeah, I mean, if they want it to move forward, they're gonna have to make the revisions and resubmit and go through that process.
No winks and nods.
Yeah,
It's, we have ordinances.
there's a lot of head shakes actually when you go through this process.
What does the contractor's timeline look like?
I know they want to get started with their earthwork as soon as they can in the spring. That's really all I've heard, and
I've shared that I don't think their timeline is very realistic.
Spring 2026 is not realistic for me.
It's not impossible, but there's, I mean, the steps that you've gotta go through, if they don't have delineation done, if they don't have their Danner permits done, if they don't, you know, engineering submittal take time, I mean, there's a lot to go through before they start.
I don't mean to contradict you, but I think there's enough time for them to pull a grading permit in the spring.
For dirt, yeah.
And for dirt, and for their infrastructure, and for a lot of it. The question is how do they have contractors lined up? You know, it's probably the bigger question. I think he was putting a time frame on himself and his contractors to be ready in the summer. I mean, I think at the earliest you'd see him be able to occupy structures. If he'd fall, would be quick, I think.
Any other items for Mitch?
Is there any concerns with our hooking into our infrastructure that he showed that we're worried about?
No, initially we were, we just didn't know if the elevations would suit the project. But he's done his investigation there and is, able to show that he's gonna have the sewer drain to that location. He's gonna extend the water main facilities as needed to bring the water system in. So already with this plan, I think some of those concerns have been mitigated.
There is some discussion on Cleveland yet on how exactly that's gonna happen, because it's not just this property that will benefit from an extension. So we're trying to get the developer on the other side together, as well as our outsiding charges, so.
So this could in fact take care of a lot of the drainage issues that were discussed?
The goal is that they don't play it and make it worse. The state statutes that are out there require anybody that's developing land, they can't discharge at a higher rate than it currently does today. They can't dam the water up on the neighbor upstream, and that's what everything kind of hinges around. Your design standards, a lot of the communities around here, Sioux Falls, their standards are written in that same fashion. So as you see areas develop, that's where you see detention ponds go in to control the release and to control the runoff. We have ordinances, the city does, that says all the building structures have to be, I can't remember, is it a foot or 2 foot? A foot above the floodplain elevation, to make sure that those structures are out of harm's way. So there's a lot of things that we live through. We also, they do full drainage analysis calculations. Our engineering field has a lot of that available. We also kind of take our projects to another level where we take their model, we run it in our model and double check it there to make sure that we agree with what the model is saying, because the models can get pretty complex.
Did I read they intend to keep these private streets?
Yeah, the Hunter Place, Jackson Court, Bellevue Drive would all be private.
Fourth would be public.
Public, yep, Fourth would be public. So everything inside there would be privately maintained. The Long Creek Trail would be set aside as a public right of way.
Even if they keep these streets private, they still have to be made to our design standards, correct?
They still have to design them in a way that emergency vehicle access can get in there, especially during a big rain event or something. They have to make sure, a lot of the standards they do meet, the only ones that maybe they won't have to meet because it's a private street are like on-street parking, the width of the streets. The boulevards between the sidewalks, I think they're proposing a sidewalk that's adjacent to the curb, which doesn't contradict your standards, but it might just look a little different than what you're used to.
But we would not accept those as public streets.
Right. The utilities, the sewer and water in those streets will be public, so there will be easements on the lands to allow access to your crews to be able to service them when they need to.
What is the likelihood that Lennox would have to take over those streets?
Well, I guess it depends on ongoing city council decisions. We would recommend never taking over streets that aren't wide enough to not allow on-street parking, so on and so forth. But if a future council wished to accept it, when the owner requested it, it's up to the council.
So can I get clarification? If these are private streets, that means we do not spray for mosquitoes and we do not plow them, correct?
Correct.
Similar to Long Creek.
Long Creek. The difference in Long Creek would be that we also don't own the water and sewer infrastructure in there.
But we would be doing Cleveland, which would be between them, but that would be it.
Correct. But we don't know yet what the Creekside addition is going to look like, if those are gonna be public streets or not, so.
Right.
Mitch, what do, not saying that we need to be like other communities, but is this pretty common in other communities with this type of development that they keep the streets private?
For a, a large multifamily area, more dense areas, you tend to see private roads. They'd probably tend to sometimes not even have private streets, it would be driving into a parking lot or something. But they wanna be able to address appropriately in there, so there's kind of that need for having some fashion of streets so that the addressing in there can be done appropriately. But no, it's not uncommon.
I would look to, you know, where now Hy-Vee, but was Dollar Fresh and Tea, those townhomes to the south there, very similar to that. You know, there's Harrisburg examples too, but I can't think of where. Northwest of the high school, I think, has a few.
Yeah, that one off in Minnesota, and just northwest of the high school is all private streets in there. I wouldn't look at that one as a good example of how this can be done. This one doesn't give me, the big thing with private streets is you don't want to become shortcuts for the traveling public. And unfortunately, that's kind of what that one turned into up in Harrisburg. And, when it can be contained just on their site, and then it's not as worrisome, I guess.
Does our police department have the authority to patrol that area if it's a private street?
I'll leave that to the chief.
On private property, we typically do not regularly patrol. I will say with such as Long Creek, we do go down in there periodically, just because it is in town. City ordinances we cannot enforce.
Like if somebody parks a trailer on that street, we can't ticket it for it.
Right, and should we be in there patrolling for speed limits? No, it's private property. So we go down there just to let the citizens of Lennox know we're here for them, so that's about it. We would do the same for that, whatever development comes up.
Other questions for Mitch?
Do they, for when their houses are built, is there enough variance that those houses are set back far enough that if the roads were ever widened?
We haven't seen that yet, so we haven't seen how the structures will be on these lots that'll be.
Just
stepped on the
curious.
road. Yeah, what we'll be looking for is that they are meeting your current setbacks. And how far they choose to set those back from their roof is yet to be determined.
For my own clarification, is it possible that they could make the decision to design these to our standards and not make them private when they go to do their permitting? Like, could we approve?
Like, could you approve the preliminary plan, they come back with engineering submittals at a 66-foot right of way instead? That's possible.
And if that's,
It would be,
yeah, and if that's a condition you wanna put on there, you have that authority.
So you're saying, setting the standard,
I would prefer that they're built to this
but then keep them
standard.
private until we choose to take them over?
I mean, I just.
My point is, why would we wanna have to take them in? That's
Not
just
that we
more,
would want.
I
that's
don't
more
know.
that's more long-term cost for us as a city.
Yes, but look at all the people who complain in Long Creek about us not maintaining and spraying and all of that, and
Yes.
we say, well, it's a private drive. We could still say that, but then if another council comes in here 15 years from now and they decide, we wanna spray that area because it's right next to the creek and we're gonna adopt those roads and they're not built to standard, that bothers me, because then we just approved 15 years prior roads that are not built to our city standard. And it's happened before because I think two of you live on a street that, it is a dead end right now, but it was not built to be part of our city. At one point, it was built to be a private drive, and it became part of our city street system.
So like,
So could it remain private and have us still have them build the streets to meet our standard? And then remain private?
It certainly could, yeah. I think from the developer standpoint, what they'll, have to take into consideration is it probably uses up a little bit more land than they were intending with the private streets.
Good point.
More land and cost.
Right,
Yeah.
and reduce the ponds and everything else.
Well, and I share that concern with you as well. I would try to discourage private streets where I can, for those reasons. Because that wasn't the first time I've been through a private street that was taken over by a city. And you get a lot of political pressure down the road if that entity all of a sudden doesn't want to manage it, and the people are complaining, they come complain to you. They don't complain to necessarily always the people that own the land.
but we certainly could add that condition on if council were in favor of that.
In a sense, it's kind of like an HOA, is essentially, correct?
They would have an entity, like an HOA, that they'd have to form to maintain, there is gonna be an owner of the streets and the property associated with that. And I don't know if that's gonna be this, was it Jocelyn or something?
Jocelyn Apartments.
Yeah. So they will have an entity formed to maintain those private facilities.
Just for clarification for me, right off of Jackson Court there to the very far west, what is that little access strip? Is that like a walking path? Is it a street?
Yeah, so it's a walking path meant for, so I asked them to add a connection from that Jackson Court to the future Long Creek Trail, so that if there ever is a walking path or a nature path along Long Creek Trail, that these property owners or these renters, whoever they might be, they're gonna have an internal sidewalk system there of their own. It would just be able to connect that sidewalk system of theirs to the public sidewalk system.
Do they have plans of where the sidewalk would go?
It would go in, on Jackson Court, I think they've got a loop on either the inside or the outside of that track. Yeah, it's on the inside.
So that Long Creek Trail is something that was put in the plans like 12 years ago or so, correct?
Yeah, I don't think it's been that long. The most recent one was adopted probably 4 years ago.
Longer than that,
Yeah.
before I was here.
But the new maps, I think, a lot of those maps change over time. So I think the most recent
Correct.
adoption had some of those map changes.
So that sidewalk would just kind of go into nowhere land, correct?
Right, and we wouldn't require them to build the sidewalk today. It would just be setting the space aside so that a sidewalk could be constructed there someday in the future. And that's not uncommon to just set some land aside on these plans, just in the event that you're gonna want that connection someday.
Back to Lauren's idea with the street standards, down the road, if the city were to acquire those streets, we could look at amending this if we want, but I would feel like there's a little bit of difference here at the table, so I'd wanna vote on that amendment before we put it on the motion, so. If there's enough voice for that, then we can add that. It's also, I don't know what kind of costs are associated with that, that would be put on the developer. But I don't know the developer's argument on why or why shouldn't we do this too, but, so I don't know if there's anything more you could speak to that, or.
I'd have to reach out to them, and we really have to get their thoughts on that.
But we could also table this too, if that's enough of we need to come back with a little bit more research on that. So just some options.
So it's going from a 40 to a 62, is that what it'd be?
66.
66.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that kills the whole plan. I mean,
Changes a
that's a
lot.
major ask.
Yeah.
So if the infrastructure, so the sewer and the water underneath the roads are the cities, if we have to come in there and fix something, who's responsible for paying for the replacement of the road that we had to tear up to fix our stuff?
Yeah. Normally, like even when you have a private utility in your roads, you have policies in place that require them to patch it back, right? So not that you have to have that same policy in the street, I mean, that needs to be written up and incorporated into the easement. And so, I would probably write in a way where if you have to dig it up, you put gravel back and it'd be their responsibility to patch it back in those situations.
More discussion, or, like I said, kind of our options.
Sorry, yes,
Yeah.
one more thing here. I saw that from a different view, because I'm not seeing it here, but different manhole covers. Do we have adequate, like, drainage? Or, like, do we have enough? How many do we have?
So the drainage is more the next step. What they're showing here is just some general, how they're planning to route, the
Yeah.
drainage through the property. That's probably the next big step that they go through. To get their grading permit, they have to do all these drainage calcs and show contour elevations. There's a lot of work to do there to show that they're meeting the standards for.
Now, I know that one of the issues was that there is current drain tile in there. Are we working with the adjacent owners to make sure that we're not cutting that?
So we had the developer noted on the plan that there is a drain tile. I believe they visited with the neighbors, from what I understand, about maybe where that is located. Sounds like we're not entirely sure where it is, but it is gonna be noted that, if they come across it as they're digging, that they'll have to put it back together.
I can send you that, Mitch.
Oh, yeah.
Perfect. When they raise that up, they don't build any sort of like little berm or nothing, is that correct?
No, they'll have to maintain, a ditch along Cleveland and make sure that they're not impacting what is flowing through there. There might be other drainage patterns on the site that, I'm not aware of just yet. Detail on it. But again, the general procedure is they evaluate the current site with nothing on it as it stands now, where the drainage patterns are, where the water's going, how it floods, and then they have to show conditions that won't make that any worse than it is today.
Thank you.
Other discussion? Questions, comments? So yeah, so we can, I'll look for a motion to approve the preliminary plan. We can table this if we want to find out a little bit more information. We can vote on an amendment to what Lauren had brought up earlier.
the motion to approve the preliminary plan.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign.
Aye.
All right, motion does carry. All right, thanks, Mitch. On to 5.4, data center discussion.
Mayor and Council, I'm not gonna read through the whole briefing that I typed up here. It's not lengthy, but it is, does have a lot of information in it. But I did want to open up an opportunity for conversation on this and see if there's a willingness to take a deeper look at whether this is something that is in our future or not, whether we simply prepare for it, whether we advocate for it, whatever it might be, and see where that discussion takes us.
All right, we'll discuss on this. I will open this up for public comment first, and then council can discuss too. So public comment on the data center agenda item. Yep.
Mayor, council members, Scott Sandel, 608 South Elm. I'm not here to talk about streets. Thank you.
Thank you.
So for decades, I've been asked over and over again, now what is it that you do? Again, what do you do? And recently what I've run into is just a ton of data center experts all over everywhere. So I embraced this to the point where, just to add some humor into this, I decided to embrace the let's talk about data centers. So I actually had sweatshirts made that simply say, let's talk about it. Okay? So let's talk about some data centers. Let's specifically talk about data porting. That's one of the topics I want to talk about and how we got here. About 30 years ago, we started the digital age. The digital age started with mainframes, PCs, laptops, gaming stations, moved on to mobile phones, and now we have apps for that, apps for this, right? We got an app for everything, and then social media came about, right? As time went along, we learned to click, like, share, love, all the above, right? With everything you have out there. We live through our videos. We love our videos. We love to share them with every friend we can online. Did you see that video? Let me share that with you. All the time. We can't even go to a concert anymore without seeing hands in the air, right? Everybody's waving, but with a phone recording it for every last person that's not there, right? We go to work, we download videos. We now record every meeting that we have, right? Every meeting is getting recorded, hosted somewhere. Ensure you save that attachment somewhere. Save it in Dropbox, SharePoint. Make sure you put it on your local PC just in case that IT guy doesn't know what he's doing, right? You need to make sure you save everything everywhere. We've now moved on to Copilot, ChatGPT, right? Because we want to make our emails sound better. We want to make it sound more professional. We want it to take the notes for us and write the summaries. We also want it to research our arguments. 90% of the arguments that I hear about data centers came from ChatGPT or one of the like, right? I'm as guilty as everybody else. Right now on my phone, I've traveled the world. I have over 60,000 photos on my phone right now, saved in iCloud, Amazon, and 2 other places, I'm pretty sure. I have 71,000 emails that I've saved over time. So I'm as guilty as everybody. It all felt free, right? This all felt free to everybody. Why? Because it just went to the cloud. Everybody saved in the cloud. But now, the communities have realized this isn't free. The cloud came down like a heavy fog on communities. Society finally realized, or finally learned, that these clouds are nothing more than a building full of computers looking for energy. So that's where we are. Tech nobodies became tech giants, like NVIDIA and OpenAI. All of a sudden became these big giants because they figured out that gaming PC and those video things, they can process data fast. And thus, the modern AI was started. Because AI has been around for decades, right? So modern AI came to be, and the race began. And most of the data center managers I work with don't even know what the race is yet. They're just building stuff as fast as they can. So the debate really isn't about data centers. Data centers aren't the problem. They were the solution to consumer behavior, is where they started. So the debate isn't about data centers, it's about the size. It's about the location. It's about the resource stewardship and the neighborly experiences that these mega facilities have brought on. So I myself Having built, so if you look at some of the records, there's only 5 noted data centers in South Dakota. Having built one of those myself in 2009 in the community, if you've ever gone to Lewis and Clark, down West City Inlands Road, you have gone by the facility and probably didn't even know it. You could probably go by it again and still not know it's there, right? So having built a data center, since that time in 2009, I have traveled the world many, many places, from the desert of Dubai to the Maldives, working with data centers throughout all of the United States. I've learned that data centers have gone unregulated, largely, in a lot of places because of the raise, but doesn't mean the measurements aren't there. The systems are capable of telling us things. So we've learned to put things like DSIM, infrastructure management, in place to start tracking these points, as well as there's policies that already exist called DCOI, if you're looking at government. There's data center optimization efficiencies that they just didn't ever put in place. They didn't regulate it, they didn't enforce it. It's their policy, they didn't enforce it. They need to do that. So in closing, don't be a data hoarder. Don't be like me, right? Delete those nonsense data points, delete the emails, the video chats, all that stuff. Start deleting, cleaning that up, bring the data volume down for the society. But the other place that I want to leave you with is, as a long-term career member in the data center industry, I open myself up to you truly to talk about data centers, because I, again, have traveled the world. My wife sells PDUs to the mega hyperscalers. PDUs, if you know what those are, there's basic power strips with extreme intelligence in them to tell you what every last computer plugged into them is drawing for power consumption, temperature, environmentals, etc. Right? So my wife does that. My daughter does audits for us. Had other kids in the community work for me. Multiple, about 12 graduates have come through the company I'm with right now to work with Sunbird. So I open myself up to you as we look at what does it actually mean to the city of Lennox to build data centers correctly for the next generation. That's all I got. Thank you.
Thanks, Scott.
Thank you.
I'll add on Scott's comments, something that wasn't in my memo came up over the weekend. What Lincoln County is going to be considering 2 sort of, I don't know if they're resolutions or ordinances, to put a moratorium on data centers of a type in Lincoln County. Now that would just be in the rural parts of Lincoln County. It doesn't govern what's in city limits. But I think, taking the time to study this, I think the timing is right. I certainly don't know enough about these to say, go, stop, caution. And so we need other expertise to tell us that.
Yeah, I think more information is always better. I mean, there's so much loud opposition against it, and it's gonna make my energy go up. It's gonna use up all of our water. It's gonna be noisy. It's gonna be, what's the truth and what's the reality? Like, that's what we need to understand before we can even have conversations. So I think getting that information, getting that education is critical to even consider anything like this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Scott, what was the permitting process like when you built a data center in Yankton?
It was actually the community of Yankton paid for it. The community of Yankton, we built the one in Yankton. I actually just went to a lot of public education, a lot of like the Lions Club, and then just explaining what data centers are. And then the actual zoning just fell into their industrial park, which they had, and they actually built it just as a spec building in 2008, and then we leased the building from them, which is now owned by another company.
Okay.
And their infrastructure was fine and able to handle everything, or were there special accommodations made to handle what a data center needs?
Sure, and that's really where a lot of the feasibility comes down, is to study what the infrastructure actually can handle from a water, from a substation, from fiber in the area, and what you kind of identify what the infrastructure can handle, what kind of customer would even be interested in that, right? Is that an enterprise, is that a co-location? It's typically not going to be like your AI factory is going to look to come in. They're headed down a different path of their own power creation and power, becoming like a power island, essentially saying, hey, we're going to go put whatever allowable, because that's some of the problems is legislation don't let us data center people create our own facilities with our own power yet. That policies have to create up. So that's where the AI factories have to go. That's why they're pushing to other places, but, sorry about a long answer to your question.
No.
The short answer is, it's basically, you have to study what the infrastructure can handle it, and then size it appropriately to that. And then, there's a lot of enterprise. One of the misnomers on a lot of the AI stuff is that, the demand is all AI factory type stuff, the mega scalers, and that's just simply not true. If you were to take that completely out of the equation, there's an enterprise demand of data centers, or like co-location traditional stuff, an enterprise demand that has about a 20–25% compound annual growth for the next 6 years. On top of that. So do your equation there and see, what if that looked like in Lennox if we grew 20% year over year for the next 5 years, how many people would be in town? That's what the data center market exists today without AI. So AI just piles on top of that to a whole different level.
The water needs, is that more so for cooling purposes?
Yeah, and again, it goes back to what is the design, and that just continues to change, and that's one of my deep-hearted arguments is around just the fact that we're talking about today's technology that everybody's using, that typically is older technology, and it's just used because it's easy and efficient, and it's what we know today. But if you look at the college students or research, and you start saying, hey, what can we come up with that's entirely different? And then NVIDIA came out with part of the answer to say, well, you needed water in the past, but now we can run our computers and cool them at 113 degrees Fahrenheit, right, 40-some degrees Celsius. So they're changing the game already. So a lot of these AI factors that were built are now being faced with, hey, the cooling system you designed to put in there for that equipment that's going to come in the next 12 to 24 months, you have to redesign the whole thing because this new technology is coming out. So that technology just keeps changing. And I truly believe you can take our research students at SDSU or USD, they can find better things. And you can go global from that. But water is a need for today's technologies, but it will change. Sure, it will change.
That water's unusable after the fact, though.
Not necessarily. Not necessarily. You got to look at the purification systems that go through that because the water has to maintain purity to a high level that goes through there. But most of the water is used on the outside of the facility. You're talking more of a glycol. Like I've ran into people, again, the industry is being introduced because there's so much money in this thing right now. I mean, there's just trillions of dollars. We in the industry have said we went from millions to billions to trillions in about 36 months. Right? That's the conversation that we've had simply because of the AI race. So the water in some of those like older data centers, sure, that's where you're probably getting into a lot of stories of people who have researched the cloud-based data centers that use old technology. But as you start looking at what's going to happen in the future, that's not true. Because I'm working with like Valvoline is looking to put their oil that they use for cooling down motor parts through those pipe systems. And that's what they'll just continue to use to chill to the chip. Right? It's the outside side of stuff. And how do we clean that up? But to me, that's where we get into the debates around what does it mean to be a good steward of resources. Absolutely, you're probably going to find any industry in the past that you're going to say, like, that was bad, that was wrong. Absolutely, that's going to be out there. But what's going to be different in the future? And that's the kind of study we want to look at is, because data centers are not stopping. What I'm seeing right now is the Middle East is like, cool, the US doesn't like it, come on over. And they'll build them anywhere, right? Right in the middle of the data center, one of the last trips that I took to Dubai, I passed 8 camel farms to get to a mega data center, right? We only put those out in the middle of the deserts. Okay, so it's there. The technologies are there. We just have to embrace them and figure out how to use them here appropriately.
Now, when they do that, is that all taken care on site, or is that something like our wastewater treatment facility would have to work with?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I think that's something that we would have to figure that out with what it means to be neighborly, what is acceptable, what is tolerable. And that's a lot of the pushback I think you're going to get even through the moratorium of Lincoln County is what does it actually mean to be a good neighbor? What do you need to take care of as the data center company within your own land and space, right? It's a lot like castles used to be like confinement buildings for a livestock type of thing. They had to put their own systems in so they didn't leak out into the community, right? Years go back, when I go back to as a kid on the ranch, right? West River kid on the ranch, you just let stuff fly, right? Let it run down the hill and down the river and away it went, right? That's how we grew up.
That'd be terrific.
Right? But improvements have come along, and that's what I'm saying about there is a lot of policies that exist that just need to be enforced, right? If we just took those and moved them forward, they're already there. And that's what needs to happen for this industry to kind of ease the pain of the communities, if you will.
Add on to that a little bit too, when we have any major industrial user looking at us, one of our first questions is how much water do you need and how much are you going to send us, but also what's going to be in what you send us. So 5, maybe 6 years ago, we were looking at a small beef processor. And one of the larger discussion points with them, for those of you that were around at the time, was what are your disinfection methods? Because that makes a big difference when it gets to our plant. If it's strong enough and the wrong chemical, it can kill off our plant, and we can lose treatment. The other thing, and you know, Scott referenced this on the surface, but you know, the whole discussion about being a good neighbor, that really plays into whatever zoning ordinance we design out of this. I've played around with it a little bit here and there, and there are things that we can do in that zoning ordinance, whether it's with a conditional use permit or just otherwise as a requirement, to make sure that we have certain protections in there for the community.
So back to your question, Bill, sorry, I never really answered it. Zoning ordinances at that point weren't any different if you put up a spec building for a manufacturing plant.
Kind of figured. Has that facility been upgraded now?
It has not yet. It's still in operation as a co-location. And it's, just to kind of give you some references, years ago, the big building north on 60th Street was a 1 megawatt facility. In terms of power consumption, when they first designed it, it was around a megawatt 20 some years ago. The same building that I designed in Yankton was a 5,000 square foot, and about 2,500 of usable data center floor, white space you call it, a white space there. It was a megawatt itself. So it all gets into the power consumption, is the size of the building to the rack level, not necessarily to the building its size of how big it is. So you could have, you know, a 100 megawatt facility that's less than 100,000 square feet in size, like this on the Century, just because of power density to rack.
When a data center is essentially obsolete, because technology is moving fast and things are changing with how things are being handled, what happens to it?
So far, not a lot, because it just keeps getting gutted and replaced of the inside. And so as the technology is modernized, so you typically think, when I build a data center, it's gonna be a 20, 25 useful life of the current facility infrastructure that I'm gonna put in there, gen sets, UPSs, floor views, those kind of things. But I know in that lifetime, I'm gonna refresh the IT equipment, the servers, switches, that stuff, about 5, maybe 6 times, because they have a 3 to 5 year lifespan on them. And that's where some of that, the tax breaks that's being talked about in period comes to the table, is that's gonna refresh the technology of the server equipment that many times. Then when the end of the life building comes along, typically you take it and replace half of it with more modern technology, and then you replace the rest. And that's what's happening in a lot of facilities right now, is they were designed for airflow, for air to move the heat out of the building, but the density of the rack now requires liquid either to the back of the rack or to the actual IT equipment. So they're just refabbing them where possible, but it's leaving a lot of white space open, right? So there are 100,000 square foot buildings using 20, 40,000 square feet of space, because that's all the power they have in them, right? And then we say the rest of it's liquid space.
And the liquid they use, you mentioned propylene glycol?
Typical glycol size.
So they've got a cooling system in there where it'll compress and cool it and send it back through. It's a contained system, not something that's pumping up.
Typically that's the more modern design, because you gotta keep your pressure, you gotta keep the flow rate, because you think about how hot those GPUs, and if you got any kid that has a gaming system, just go check it out. Just go check it out. It's got a little fan on it with a little CPU, a little to dissipate the heat back up. That's really all it is a rack full of those things. And so the plate that sits on top of those chips, the liquid that goes through there has to go in at a certain pace, a certain flow rate, and a certain pressure, so that the heat will be removed. It goes too fast, it doesn't get removed. It goes too slow, and those things, modern data centers of the AI type stuff are like 3-second failure rates, right? If it starts heating up, it just goes. Where typical older data centers, you had 8 to 30 minute kind of time. I could walk by and feel heat and still not be in trouble.
If I wanted to dig deeper into states that already have a successful plan in place with data centers, where would I look?
Successful in what way? That they exist or that they've kept in mind?
That they exist and they're neighborly.
Does
Does that exist in the United States yet?
Yeah, you could look at Nebraska. I mean, it's gonna vary depending upon opinion that you get, but Nebraska has some really good policy and have data centers there for, I mean, we have a lot more data centers in Sioux Falls. The 5 that they know are just ones that are offered to to co-location facilities or cloud-based or that kind of thing. I go by 2 data centers every time I go to work, every day. One is for a medical place and the other one's for the other medical place in town, right? So I drive by them every day and nobody even knows they exist. So from a neighborly type of thing, yeah, you could go down to South Nebraska. They've done it very well down there to work with community there to bring up facilities that aren't noisy. They don't have the pollution type thing that people talk about. They've done it pretty well there.
And is that led by the state of Nebraska, or is that led by county or municipality?
I think it's a little of both. They've all kind of just come together in terms of, hey, we want to exist. The data centers have come and said, we want to exist here, and the communities have said, okay, if you want to exist here, here's what you need to abide to, and it just worked out from what I've seen there. And it also fits because they have the power and the fiber that run right through. That's a big equation to it, is being successful is having both the power availability and the fiber availability that hits both those highways quick, right? On top of being close to travel, and like, it would make no sense for me to build a data center in Faith out by the ranch, because I can't get equipment there. I can do a power island, I could probably get people to bring me fiber, but I can't get the equipment I need there on a plane into Rapid, then I got a 2-hour drive to get there. It just logically doesn't make sense. So it ties, that's why they come close to communities.
I think Papillion is one of the communities down there that stands out. Council Bluffs, probably 20 years ago, opened, the first one that I can remember hearing about, that was a big Google data center back in the day. I assume it's still operating.
It's still operating, yep.
But I'm not sure what their ordinances say. Maybe that would be a good starting point for us to look at as well.
Is there any brief concerns with residents that live in close proximities to those?
To the ones down there, or the ones just in general in terms of
In
data center?
general.
There again, it gets to the size, right? If you look at the data center I built in Yankton, they're building communities right around it and nobody has a clue, right? And then if you start getting to the hyperscalers, like the ones that they're building in Ellendale, those are mega facilities and they have a lot more. So it'd be like almost think of like an ethanol plant decided to build there right next to you, right? That's what they're going through. And so they've got to decide if they like that or not like that as a community. But it just really depends on how big it is and what its purpose is, as to whether, and again, that's where I think we as a community can study what is right for us, what would be right if we brought in, because the tax, and you can get into a lot of that, but the tax revenue, if you have one, can be pretty significant, just in terms of the property tax, because of the cost of the building. On average, some of the hyperscalers, their average cost to build is about 11.5 million per megawatt. So if you build a 25 megawatt facility, you're at 250 million. And then to put gear inside of it, it's 2 to 3x that cost. So it's small, that's a very small 25 megawatt facility. You're getting close to $1 billion property in the community that quick. Then the power just comes into that, and you get to tax on that. So that side of the facility, you wouldn't even really notice. So that's where it just depends on what you're talking about. If you're talking the one in Ellendale, yeah, people probably notice that one. Talk to one that's probably 25 megawatts, probably not even know it exists.
That's really where the comprehensive plan comes into play as well. If you look at the Cooper land south of Wilson Trailer and south of the high school, you got 160 acres of industrial land there. But we also know that to the west, we have in the comprehensive plan residential. Well, what kind of buffer would you need there? What kind of setback would you need there to make that residential development still possible and palatable for people that want to live there?
In page 3 at the top of your memo, it talks about the amount of electricity, and some of the concerns I've heard from neighboring communities, citizens, is that that's passed on, the cost of the electricity is passed on to the other utility users. But in your memo, it says South Dakota has regulations against that. I could either of you, I guess, expand upon that?
It's a separate briefing,
Yeah.
but the Public Utilities Commission has regulations promulgated that dictate what can and can't be passed on to the customer. So if there's, it's really not all that different than how we do it. Let's say we install a new lift station a mile south of town that's gonna serve the whole community, but also serve a new developing or to be developed area. Well, everybody who's benefiting from that could essentially be financially responsible for it. If we are building a new lift station that benefits only a new industrial user and nobody else, well, guess who's gonna pay for that? That industrial user is gonna pay for it. So that's similar, and my understanding is that that's similar to how PUC is set up, but I'd have to go in and do a little bit more digging. And I think there's legislation coming this year that would make that statute and not just a PUC regulation as well.
In my studies with the local utilities, if I decide I want to build a data center on the side of town, 25 megawatts, I immediately get to build a 25 megawatt power plant to offset the use. So that 25 or 100 megawatt facility, I get to spend another $400 million to build it out. Right up front. It's like, and not only that, it's a take it and pay for it kind of a thing. So whether I use that or whether it is, and I'm not saying I'm looking to build it, I'm just saying in general, just the research, I'm always curious about this stuff. It's a take or pay kind of thing, where if I say I'm gonna take 10 megawatts and I don't use 10 megawatts, I still get to pay for 10 megawatts, right? So that's still tax money regardless of how much I use within the facility. Right? So it's kind of a double win in a way, because one, you have to build a power plant to offset your usage at that level, and two, you get to pay for it. Data center gets to pay for it regardless. Same with natural gas, it's the same thing.
If you look at the rate side of it, you might remember how we structured our rates with the proposed men's prison, where they're paying a volume rate, and an escalator on there if they went over that. That's similar to how these larger industrial users structure rate agreements with the utilities. It is different than what you or I pay, but in most cases, it's probably more.
So if we went forward with this, then we would essentially treat this like a customer, correct?
For
Potentially,
purposes of utilities?
correct.
Yes. In terms of water and sewer, I would assume, because we only have so much water available, that if this were to happen, if somebody were to build one, it would all have to be self-contained cooling. They could only use water for regular domestic purposes, kitchen, restrooms, irrigation, those kinds of things.
Just trying to clarify that if we had citizens who were against this, it's not something that they can really vote on, correct?
Well, I mean, you'd probably have a zoning ordinance. It depends on how we did this. I mean, if it's something that's possible, my recommendation would be to have a zone that's specific to this type of use and separate from heavy industrial or light industrial. If you look at the Sioux Falls discussion from a couple weeks ago, they were putting it into a light industrial zone, and I don't know that that's the right area. I think it is special and kind of on its own, and given some of the potential, what we call in zoning objectionable uses, I think heavy industrial or its own zone probably makes more sense. I'd have to look. I believe that's already. I think that land is all zoned A right now. But I can't remember.
So.
I do know there's a model in Kansas City where they're building a zoning ordinance specifically for data centers. And if I'm not mistaken, the part of this would be, if you move forward with this, would just be the visibility around what would it take and what are some of those things to bring back as information to say, here's what we should do in Lennox to leave the state of South Dakota, right, and to global if we want to. Here's what we should do. Here's what we should do as a proper zoning ordinance if we're going to take ag to prepare for data centers. Here's what they need to adhere to. I think
That's what I'm understanding.
Yeah, and it's zoned ag right now. And obviously if there's an industrial use on it, it would have to be rezoned. So that would be an ordinance. That would be subject to referendum.
And that it would be up to planning and zoning, correct?
Yeah, planning and zoning would have to review it first. Recommend or not recommend to the city council, and the city council can either take that recommendation or not take it.
So you're just looking for a motion to authorize selection and negotiation of an agreement for a consultant?
Yes.
Are there consultants in the state, or do you have a consultant already identified? Is there more than one?
I'm sure there is more than one, but, yeah, the nice thing about using somebody local is, I feel like if we're using somebody from town, we've got some local stake in this, and it's not, I could probably find a developer consultant out of Sioux Falls or Omaha or Twin Cities or something that doesn't have any investment in our community, and doesn't really care whether this works for us or not. So that would be my recommendation, is to stay local on this one.
So Scott, is that something that you're, like, in your company or your business right now, is that something you do often, or?
I work with data centers every day, like literally talk to them every day, what their designs are, what's happening with them, where they're building, why they're building, et cetera. If you look at the Ellendale, North Dakota, I'm working with a company that's putting equipment inside of that right now. I truly just got back from Dubai, Saudi Arabia, and Abu Dhabi, meeting with customers there who are starting to expand, so it's absolutely my wheelhouse. And when you look at land developers, they're gonna look at the land in a particular way that may be good for like typical manufacturing, but you wanna go deeper into that, into the actual construction of the facility based upon technology that's coming or is already out. Right? So you wanna go deeper than that into than just saying, hey, here's a piece of property that could support X amount of power. You wanna actually go into the facility and understand it, because that's what the community, I feel, is looking for in transparency. What are they actually doing inside of there, right? To some level, so yes, 100%. And I love to talk about data centers.
Do you think they're more efficient in a cooler climate such as ours?
Yeah, there's absolutely, there's a whole world around quote unquote free cooling, but when we hit temperatures like we have this week, the free cooling doesn't work as good because it's got to go into manual cooling. But yeah, there's X number of days that here in South Dakota we get quote unquote free cooling outside of refrigerant. So as it goes through, just the natural air, ambient air takes care of it. So maybe that's why they're here. Why they're going to North Dakota. If you look at the map, there's a lot more up north. Like a handful.
A lot more empty space too.
So the scope of work that you could provide would be to help us look at, power, fiber, our water, like that's like what type of facility could we handle?
Yep.
But then do you have the contacts to actually recruit those types of people, or I guess what would be the next step after getting that information?
Yep. So the way that I would look at it, sorry, I don't want to really keep you guys on it, but I can go on and talk about data centers.
School tomorrow.
We actually started last year as a family. We talk every Sunday night about data centers. We get together because they're such a vital part of what's happening in the future, from all research to universities and everything. What I would lay out as kind of the plan is, number one, can we build a data center and what would it look like here? To what size would be tolerable based upon all the infrastructure, from the substation to the fiber providers who are here, what routes they have coming in, to the water resources going, kind of just what would look like that. Then I turn to my Rolodex and say, hey, here's what we have as a community, here's what we put together, whom would be interested in that? And that's anywhere, like I say, from universities to hospitals to the hyperscalers. That it fits into my Rolodex to see who would be interested in utilizing that, if not even one of the local. There could be one of the telco companies, SDN, any of those looking in the area that want to get into that space. So then we would take that. So first we do all the research, do all the community meetings, understand what is tolerable, give the education to the community, the exact same thing I did in the last one, but we're still working on, go through all that exercise on different ways, and get some ideas around that, to using the community to make that happen, and then go to the Rolodex and say, okay, who wants to build here based upon what we found? Or we may find that it's just not feasible. We may find that, hey, we're just not the right fit for anything bigger than a 1 megawatt, and that probably wouldn't entice somebody, right? So, there would be a pivotal point in that findings.
I would like to make a motion to authorize the city administrator to select and negotiate an agreement with a consultant for data center feasibility study.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Thank you, Scott. Okay, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right, motion carries. Thank you. We have 5.5, internal controls and cybersecurity.
Mayor and Council, this comes at the request of the mayor, following discovery of multiple cybersecurity breaches and internal control failures over the course of the last month. The mayor asked staff to provide an update on protections we have in place to prevent breaches, fraud, and similar events. So Finance Officer Tyson will be available to describe our internal controls, and Chad Ronsagen from our IT contractor Rastech will be available to discuss cybersecurity. Please note that we reserve time in executive session for discussion of the cybersecurity process. We'll obviously want to protect that information from public consumption. Take it away, Tyson.
So yeah, I guess I just thought about a nice 80s comic, just a bill sort of thing, kind of going over how an invoice gets to you guys when it comes to how these email fraud things are kind of occurring around the state. So it basically just starts off with any employee, usually a department head, kind of needs to buy something for their department, and they tell either Jen or I about the purchase to be made, and then we make a purchase order for it. Those are the ones, like the second page, that have me and Jen, or the department head and I sign off on it. And the PO, or the purchase order, stays in the drawer until an invoice is actually made or brought to us from the vendor. And then once the invoice is received, it's attached to the back of the PO and it's sent to me to be reviewed and signed. And after I've reviewed and signed it, it's going to be processed for the next claims report. And then a voucher is printed off, that's the pink and green sheets on the front there. And then those are reviewed by Nate and signed by him. And then once that's done, they get sent to you guys for one last, I guess the second to last review and signature from you and any questions to be had. And then after city council, it comes back to me and I do one last review and sign of it tomorrow morning of every check and voucher.
Are all invoices paid via check?
All of the major ones. The only ones that are not are, the only ACHs we have are like payroll, direct deposit, payroll liabilities, are like loan auto payments to US Bank, and like random monthly, like every month recurring stuff, and like credit card fees,
Sure.
stuff like that. Otherwise, everything is check. Yeah, I'm open to any questions if you got them.
So something that's, so some of those slips are not just for checks, those are also online ACH.
Yep,
The pink ones are ACH.
Pink ones are ACH, okay.
Mhm.
And then just, so how many signatures go on those?
In total, a PO gets 2, that'd be the department head, and then I sign everyone unless I'm like the purchasing officer, and Nate's the one who signs it and reviews it, and then a voucher is printed, that's Nate's signature, and then it comes to you guys, one of the city council members signs it, you sign the checks, Nate signs the checks, and then I also sign the checks, and then we send them out. And every purchase we make goes through council.
This is also where I give my annual reminder to watch All the Queen's Horses.
That's a big one.
If you haven't seen it already.
Yeah.
Do we have preventative measures as far as how we transfer money outside of like a check? So we don't lose it through fraud?
Well, if we set up like an ACH, like we have an employee's direct deposit, they sign the form and we have the bank accounts in there. If they want to change it, I usually have them come see me personally, just come to City Hall and tell me. When it comes to an actual vendor, it's set up on their like official website most of the time. When it comes to US Bank, they have like a certified contact with US Bank for all of our loan payments. Whenever we change bank accounts, which I guess has happened once under my.
Did you say US Bank?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's a majority of the
Oh,
loans.
okay.
There's also a First Bank and Trust and a First Premier Bank.
Okay,
Is that the SRF?
Most of them SRF, yeah.
okay,
I think all the SRFs are US Bank as well as the pool bond.
Yeah.
So there's a bunch of, US Bank ones in here this month, because our quarterly payments are due, or no.
Yeah, they all come through under, like this one, US Bank Sewer, that one, and then all the 5 different loans we got. And there's 5 more for water.
how, if you have to transfer along with the transfer, if you have to transfer funds from one account to another, or one bank to another, what's that approval process look like?
For when we switched from First Interstate to American Bank and Trust and Security, Dawn, what's her title at First Interstate? Dawn?
She was branch manager, I think.
Sure.
Just the bank
Yep.
franchise manager.
Yep.
She came down and it had to be, Jen and Nate had to sign it, and I believe one of you.
2. Yep. So
Yeah,
those are the
2 of
signature
you.
cards that
Yeah.
Chad and Danny signed, I signed, Tyson signed.
Yeah, and every time there's a switch in council members, then we have to redo the process for that.
There isn't, it's not very often that we transfer from one bank account to another. We kept the First Interstate account just for ambulance, if I remember right, and then everything else went over to American Bank and Trust. And the only thing that's over at security is our DOC funds.
If you have to transfer money over to the ambulance account, is that done via check?
We haven't had to,
Okay.
ever.
Yeah.
Never.
You mean like when we do our year-end transfer? It's really just an intra-fund transfer.
It's just
It's not something that we have to take money from one bank to another.
Okay.
It just on paper goes from one fund to another.
Okay.
Mayor, are you at liberty to elaborate what brought this from mind?
Well, some of it was the dual county, Trip County, had an invoice that was paid by their finance manager online. It was a fictitious invoice. I forget what the amount, Nate, you know.
$826,000. It was a contractor, it was somebody posing as a legitimate contractor that they had been doing work with.
A spoofed email.
Yep, and I know it happens to people personally, too, but also, yeah, I mean, we're getting government agencies now. I know a church that had a couple $1 million taken out too recently, so.
It wasn't the only government, there was multiple, but that was
Oh, sure, yep.
most closest one.
Every year, if not just in South Dakota, certainly in the region, there's a story of at least one small town where clerk did something wrong, whether it was intentional or not. And it's a given. The only reason we hear about it is because it's all public record when you're working with governments. It happens in private as well, so.
Does that person get fired for a mistake like that? Or is
Most
it
often
kind of
arrested.
Arrested for something that
Yeah.
they.
Well, yeah,
could
they're
have
Doing
getting,
it themselves.
yeah, they're the ones who then put it all in the lottery machine.
Or the horse,
Right.
as the case may be.
If you watch that documentary he's talking about, wow. Wow.
Other questions for Tyson, otherwise we can go to executive session for cybersecurity.
Mayor, I do have the South Dakota Code designation in there.
Okay.
1-252 sub 6A is the designation we'll be going to executive session under.
Okay, thanks for noting that. Any other questions?
Motion
for Tyson?
to enter exec.
Okay. All right, and let's, do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right, now declare this an executive session, 9:36 PM.
I will catch you.